भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ॐ भूर्भुवस्सुवः तत्सवितुर्वरेण्यं भर्गो देवस्य धीमहि धियो यो न प्रचोदयात्। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ तच्छम्यो रावृणीमहे गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं जिगातु भेषजं शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शं चतुष्पदे। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपाद स भूमिं विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगुं सर्वं यद्भूतं यच्च भव्यम् उदामृतस्वस्येशानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अथो ध्यायागुश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वा भूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतं दिवि। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
I want you to chant again because that was not chanting with heart, it was chanting with head. Om Sahasrashirsha Purushah Sahasrakshas Sahasrapad Sabhumim Vishwato Vritva Atyadishtadashangulam Purusha evedagum sarvam yadbhutam yaccha bhavyam उदामृतत्वस्येशानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ध्यायागुश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वा भूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतं दिवि। One more time, because the last mantra is not correct, coming correctly.
Om Sahasrashirsha Purushah Sahasrakshas Sahasrapad Sabhumim Vishwato Vritva Atyadishtadashangulam Purusha evedagum sarvam yadbhutam yaccha bhavyam उदामृतत्वस्येशानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो जायागुश्च पूरुषः
अतो जायागुश्च पूरुषः
अतो जायागुश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतं दिवि.
Well, I'll say the last mantra again. Yetavanasya mahima.
Yetavanasya mahima. Yetavanasya mahima.
Ato jayaguscha purushaha.
Ato jayaguscha purushaha. Ato jayaguscha purushaha.
Padosya vishwabhutani.
Padosya vishwabhutani. Padosya vishwabhutani.
Tripadasyaamritam divi.
Tripadasyaamritam divi. Tripadasyaamritam divi.
You know, to read Sanskrit, you're trying to figure out from English, and the English has intonations. Yeah, that's why. Yeah, so you need who has the one with, okay. Yeah, come and sit next to Uncle. Yeah, help him out. Okay, good. Make sure he chants properly, huh? So what we're studying is what's called the Purusha Suktam. And the Purusha Suktam, I know today many of you have come for the bhajans, and unfortunately you're stuck with the Veda class. And so I apologize for that. So we had to shift the class this weekend, and also next weekend we'll also have the class at 11 o'clock because we have the Akhanda Rudra Parayana. By the time I come back it will be late, so next weekend also we'll have it 11 o'clock. So that relieves some people to do differently for their afternoon program. So Purusha Suktam is the description of how the creation has come into existence. Creation came into existence from only one thing called the Supreme Consciousness. And I was mentioning before, just like the quantum physics has actually now completely connects that everything came from this consciousness. Consciousness is the one that created the matter. And the matter comes from consciousness. So if you call this consciousness Purusha, and from this Purusha came the entire existence of the universe and the cosmos. And in the context of that consciousness, if you imagine consciousness as one big pie, only 1/4 of this consciousness got manifested as matter, and 3/4 of this consciousness is unmanifest, and that is still consciousness. And so 1/4 of the consciousness came into matter means what? If you cannot even understand the matter completely, for scientists it is bad news, because they are still trying to figure out what matter is, and that matter is only a quarter of this consciousness. So it's impossible, impractical even to comprehend the scale and scope of what consciousness is. And that comes to the great thing of physics and the quantum physics now, what's called the string theory. And the string theory is that everything, even your thought, is like a string. Now what used to be called electrons, protons, neutrons, now there are positrons, there are all kinds of trons, and it is ultimately trans. How many particles are now described in physics? Sadiq? Huh? Innumerable number of... Yeah. Yeah. How many incredible number of particles are getting described. Now they don't even call them particles. They call them what? Strings. It's the strings theory. And what is a string? A string is something that is a string. We're all familiar with that, right? Somebody is doing like this. What is that? String. Done. Something happened. String. Fixed. String is that anything that has an energy pattern is a string. So what happens when you start doing an experiment, and this is what that Professor Goswami is, a quantum physicist that has really studied quantum physics. Ultimately, what they're saying is quantum physics is turning into philosophy rather than science. It's a theology, it's the now study of the thought. Every thought of ours is like a string. Every thought of ours is like a particle. Now you see, when Newton started discovering science, guys, I'm talking all the science because whether you care about Veda or not, Veda at the end of the day is the description of the inner principles of science that exist in a human being. It is nothing to do with the religion. So when we actually think about what these Vedas are, just like Newton described theory of gravity, what we are now describing, what this Suktam is describing is how did creation come into existence? And what is the scope of this consciousness? And now somebody asked the question. To begin with, there is only one thing called consciousness. And you can call that consciousness as divine energy for the sake of defining what that is. It's an energy. Now this consciousness, in order to manifest itself, has to get subdivided into two things called potential energy and kinetic energy. Potential energy is something that has potential. It is latent and it is not manifested. Kinetic energy is something that is actually manifest. You can watch it. Water that is stored in a tank is potential energy. When you put a pipe and water falls through the pipe, it is kinetic energy. Now what you are seeing is the water is falling. It has movement associated with it. And that's kinetic energy. And that kinetic energy is only a small part of the potential energy because it's only limited by how much you have, the hole of the tap is, and how the force of the stuff that is coming through it is, right? So the brother was asking, what is the 100%, what is this percentage? So if you imagine that tank as the unmanifest, what is manifest through the pipe flowing through is only a very small portion of it. So this kinetic energy is described in the Veda as Shakti. The potential energy is described in the Veda as Shiva. So what together is Shiva Shakti? That's the divine energy. When you talk about what Shiva Shakti is, kinetic and potential energy together, unseparated, that is consciousness. Once it separates into the kinetic energy, it is Shakti, and what is unmanifest is still Shiva, and that is the potential energy. Making clear? So what we said so far is saying is, this manifestation of the universe, Etavan, Asya Mahima, all of it is the manifestation, the grace of that supreme consciousness. Ato Jaya Vishya Purusha. Now don't get carried away that this Purusha is just this kinetic energy or the potential energy. It's a way to understand that. To begin with, there is only one thing. And from that came, now this is very, very simple but very complex to understand, because the duality, the separation of matter and energy, if it is only to begin with consciousness energy, how did matter come into existence? From this energy only, from this consciousness only. How do we understand that? When we were studying first time Purusha Suktam, one boy asked me the question, "Uncle, come on, I'm lost here." He asked the question, well, if God created everything, in order for God to create something, He required some matter, no? So to begin with, there is God and the matter. How do we know that God and matter, God required something to create something, right? If you want to make a chapati, you need the dough. So there is the chapati maker, there is the dough. That means what? To begin with, there are two things. But you keep saying there is only one thing called the consciousness, and from which the dough came. How do we understand that? God required some substance to make all this stuff. And how do we actually understand that? Then I asked him the question, Did you watch Spider-Man? Did you watch Spider-Man? Yeah. And what happens with the Spider-Man? Who created the web for the Spider-Man? Where is the web coming from? From his own body, yeah. What is he doing? His own thing, he is using it and he is creating the web and he is going from one building to another building, right? Yeah, God is a Spider-Man. It's very simple as that. God is a Spider-Man. You watch the spider, what it does? Very beautifully, the spider actually uses its own saliva to create the web. So where did the web come from? Spider did not go someplace else and got some material to make the web. The web material actually came from within the spider. It made this web, and this web is so beautiful. World Wide Web, www. And this World Wide Web that it created, what the spider does, it now in the center, and if you watch a spider, see, this is the beauty of watching nature. Because the nature is the best teacher in the entire universe. There is no best teacher than the Mother Nature. So you watch a spider, what happens? The spider will go from the center of the web to the end of the web. It keeps going, it keeps weaving. And then what it suddenly does is, if you watch a spider, and I watch the spiders very carefully, because not I was scared of them, I was intrigued by what the spider, many people are scared of the spiders, so they don't even want to watch them. Now, what the spider does is, after playing and playing and playing, it comes to the center of the web, and if you notice, it drops from the center of the web and starts retracting the entire web into itself, just like the Spider-Man, after he finishes from jumping from one place to another place, he stands on the road, does like this, all the web comes back to him. That's what Purusha Suktam is. Class over. That's exactly what Purusha Suktam is. Now, is the Spider-Man is equal to the entire saliva? No. Only a little bit of the saliva that the spider uses to make the web. There is a lot more potential in the spider. It used only a little bit of the saliva. God also did exactly the same thing. He said, let me play. I got to play. And he took a little bit of himself and he created only 1/4 of this consciousness. He decided to make the World Wide Web. And then he created so many different people. And then that's what's called evolution. And then the spider has to resolve the entire web. You see how beautifully it is resolved. It's all these beautiful pentagons, octagons, etc. It's creating from center to this and then connects all these things. How beautifully it is weaved. And that is the resolution of the web into so many different things. Into people, into all different kinds of beings, into all the other things. Then what happened? He didn't use his full potential. Then he starts playing with himself in the web that he has created himself. And then once he decides, okay, I am tired, everything has to dissolve. And then goes back, everything dissolves. And everything evolves. And everything resolves. Evolves, resolves, dissolves. Evolves, evolves, not revolves, resolves. Revolve is, we are so used to the, rotating door. Evolves, resolves, dissolves. When he evolves, he is called Brahma. When he resolves, he is called Vishnu. When he dissolves, he is called Shiva. Now, how foolish it is to think, oh, Brahma is greater than Vishnu. Vishnu is greater than Shiva. Shiva is greater than, oh, all these three guys are anyway dumb. I am not going to worship any of the three of them. Right? You can create what it is what we are talking as gods is nothing but manifestation of this energy in a many different ways, and the energy can now manifest in 330 million ways, and therefore there is no limitation of the manifestation of this energy. Are you all connected? Etavan asya mahima. Now what I'm going back to the mantra. Everything that we are seeing is resolving from this Supreme Consciousness. And that Supreme Consciousness that we are talking about is only 1/4 manifested. Tripad Urdhva Uday Purusha Padosyeha bhavat punaha tato vishvam vyakramat sasananasane abhi. That is the next mantra. Now let's all come back and chant, because that's the next mantra. Tripadur. Okay, 1 second, I have to get my scale back. Tripadur svabudhai purushaka.
Tripadur svabudhai purushaka.
Okay, let's get the words correctly first. Tripad urdha udai purushaha. That is what it is saying in English. Now if you see these funny characters with dashes between and symbols out there, that's the intonation. It's like reading some music chart. Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha.
Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha. Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha.
Not everybody is chanting. They're figuring out, let the next guy chant. I will simply listen. Not everybody is chanting. Yes? I'll then ask only first 2 rows to chant, next 2 rows to chant, so that I'll hear everybody. You don't want that, right? It's too embarrassing and putting on the spot, right? Tripadurdhva budhai purushaka.
Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha. Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha.
Padosyeha bhavat punaha.
Padosyeha bhavat punaha. Padosyeha bhavat punaha.
Padosyeha bhavat punaha.
Padosyeha bhavat punaha. Padosyeha bhavat punaha.
Tato vishvam vyakramat.
Tato vishvam vyakramat. Tato vishvam vyakramat.
Sasananasane abhi.
Sasananasane abhi. Sasananasane abhi.
So it is not shashana, sashana. Sa-sha-na, na-sha-ne, abhi. Now all the thing is down, with the exception of that ne and bhi. Everything else is sa-sha-na-na-sha-ne, abhi.
Sasananasane abhi. Sasananasane abhi.
Tripadurdhva budhai purushaka.
Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha. Tripadurdhva budhai purushaha.
Padosyeha bhavat punaha.
Padosyeha bhavat punaha. Padosyeha bhavat punaha.
Tato vishvam vyakramat.
Tato vishvam vyakramat. Tato vishvam vyakramat.
Sasananasane abhi.
Sasananasane abhi. Sasananasane abhi.
I'll chant the whole mantra and you repeat it. Tripadurdhva budhai purushaka. Padosyeha bhavat punaha. Tato vishvam vyakramat. Sasananasane abhi.
Tripadurdhva
Purushakha.
Tripādurdvabudhai Purushaha Pādosyeha bhavat punaha tato vishvam vyakramat sājanāna shane abhi.
Tripad, people are saying Tripad, three is not up. Tripādurdvabudhai Purushakha.
Tripādurdvabudhai Purushaha Pādosyeha bhavat punaha tato vishvam vyakramat sājanāna shane abhi.
Now, what this mantra is saying very beautifully is, how did the Divine One create everything that we are seeing around us? And he said, Tripad, 3/4, Urdhva-udait Purushaha. For the Purusha, this consciousness, Tripad, 3/4 is Urdhva, is above. Means what? Above our head. It cannot be understood. Okay. Padosyeha bhavat punaha. Bhavat means manifestation, born. Only 1/4 is utilized by him to be born. And how did he get born? Then he said, all the matter is created. And God said, I am going to enter into everything as the life force. Tato Vishwam Vyakramat. And this entire cosmos, the universe, he decided to pervade. And what that means, you see how beautiful that is to imagine. To begin with, everything is just matter. God said, I am entering into all of this matter. And then he just entered. And then once he entered, what happened? Sāshana, anashane, abhi. He decided to do it in two things. In some, he was alive. In some, he was just lethargic. Sāshana means alive. Anashane means he is, some are destroyable, some are indestructible. You understood? Sāshana means the one that comes and goes. Anashane means the one that is indestructible. What that means? All the things that has the Chaitanya in them, like a flower, it has to open, wither, fall, die. Whereas you see a piece of rock, it is Jada. Means what? The Chaitanya is in it, but it appears to not have any life. But God is in that too. Consciousness, energy. When I use the word God, it doesn't mean God like a person. I'm using three words synonymously. The first word I'm using is God, second word I'm using is divine energy, third word I'm using is consciousness. All the three are the same. You can call them, if you don't want to think about God, that's okay. Think about divine energy or consciousness. 1/4 what happened? Tripad urdhva-udait Purushaha, above the head. Adosyeha bhavat punaha. Means again he decided to, that consciousness decided to manifest itself 1/4. And how did it manifest? All was lying down, he entered. The energy just entered. And when it entered, some started getting up and dancing. Some said, let me be quiet and lethargic, like a stone, a metal, a mountain, a hill. Some had liveliness in them, like a river, like a flower, like a rivulet, which you can actually notice the Chaitanya, the moment, the kinetic energy can be noticed. Let's chant the mantra again.
But that doesn't mean they are different from each other, right? That's the thing. That one is greater, one is the other.
There's nothing called greater and lower in that. That's the whole point of that. In some, he decided to just show the kinetic energy. In some, he said, I'm not showing the kinetic energy. So what that means? This also has God in it. But guess what? There is no kinetic energy in this. But this one here, jumping up and down, this one here, lot of kinetic energy in it. And so it is jumping up and down. Can't keep that kinetic energy. Understand? Are we all making sense? Is it too complex for you guys? Yes, that's now that you understood so clearly, let's chant perfectly now, okay? Yeah.
But the wood is actually from the tree. Like the tree is actually lively.
The wood is not from, okay, now he is coming back to the Kripa. Is the tree the wood or wood the tree? Now even within the tree, you see some that is manifested, and we'll come to that. This is very, very beautiful, very subtle to understand the divine energy and the creation, right? And that's why when we were chanting the Rudram, what were we chanting? You're chanting Irinyaya, Prapadhyaya, Kigumsilaya, Kshayanaja. What you're saying, he's in a boulder, he's in a mountain, he's in a twig, he's in a dry twig, he's in a alive twig, he's in the wood, he is in a path where people cannot walk, he is in the fields that cannot be cultivated, he is in the places where food is cultivated. So what that's saying? He is in everything. Chaitanya, conscience is in everything, and the conscience is manifest in some and unmanifest in other, but the conscience is the same. Hello?
No, what I'm saying is, so we have a tree, right, that's growing.
Yeah.
That is, the consciousness is latent.
Right.
That's shown.
Right.
It's visible.
Right.
But when you cut a tree, and when you make some a door or something, that stays there. That doesn't move or anything. I mean, it doesn't grow.
Yes.
So there the divinity is latent.
Yeah.
But so what's the difference?
In things that appear to be moving and alive, growing, right? So there are 5 characteristics. There is birth, there is growth, there is movement, there is decay, and then there is death. 5 attributes. Those are the ones that have a kinetic energy. Something is born, then it is changing, growing, right? Then it starts decaying, and finally it falls. Just like a human body, it's born, you watch it growing, and you watch it moving, and then you watch it decaying, and then it finally gone. You understand? 5 attributes, and that is what is called alive thing. That's what we're talking about. Yeah? So, Tripadurdhva Udai Purushaka.
Tripadurdhva Udai Purusha Padosya Mahat Punaha Tato Vishwam Yakramat Sashanana Shane Abhi Tripadurdhva Udai Purusha
Yat Purushena Havisha. Okay. Tasmad Virada Jayata.
Tasmad Virada Jayata. Tasmad Virada Jayata.
Virajo Adhipurushaha.
Virajo Adipurushaha. Virajo Adipurushaha.
Sajato Atyarichyata.
Sajato Atyarichyata. Sajato Atyarichyata.
Paschad Bhumi Matho Puraha.
Paschad Bhumi Matho Puraha. Paschad Bhumi Matho Puraha.
Okay, if I'm chanting too fast, you are repeating too fast. I'm chanting slower than what you are repeating. Because I don't want you to do that. I want you to pay attention to the intonation and to the words. And chant with reverence, not mechanically. Okay? Pay attention to the intonation and the pronunciation. Tasmad Virada Jayata.
Tasmad Virada Jayata.
Virajo Adhipurushaha.
Virajo Adhipurushaha. Virajo Adhipurushaha.
Virajo Adhipurushaha.
Virajo Adhipurushaha. Virajo Adhipurushaha.
Sajato Atyarichyata.
Sajato Atyarichyata. Sajato Atyarichyata.
Paschat Bhumi Matho Puraha.
Paschat Bhumi Mato Puraha. Paschat Bhumi Mato Puraha.
These two mantras, the previous one and this one, is what is actually how the divine manifested as the whole universe. The first one we said only 1/4. He entered and he manifested. And it is describing now what exactly happened later to that. Right? What happened later to that? Tasmat Virada Jayata. Later, from this, a beautiful, incredible cosmos, universe came into existence. Virada Ajayata. Virat means the cosmic form came into existence. Everything, the universe came into existence. And Virajo Adhi Purushaha. Now this cosmic, from him he created to create a sun, and that sun is called Brahma, if you want to call it. Just like in Bible, as we go through the Genesis piece, God decided to create Adam and Eve, and Adam and Eve became the rest of the creation, right? We're talking about, but Adam and Eve are not Shiva Shakti concept. It's something very much limited in concept. What here is saying is the whole universe came into existence from only one thing. Like I said last class, it's not that God is in everything, right? We said Brahman is everything. Not everything is Brahman. You understand? Brahman is in everything. So that's why God, what did he say? My spark of divinity is in everything. It doesn't mean everything is divine. Only the spark is there. For in some people, the spark is shining. In some people, it is hidden by sheets after sheets after sheets. You can't even see the fellow, a castor oil face. In some, it is manifested. You can see the spark existing. And to make this spark come alive from within us, that is the point of sadhana. How does this? You have to clean the glass that is around the lamp. And if you have a beautiful lamp and you put a piece of glass on it, if the glass is covered with the dust and with soot, what happens? The light won't express itself, right? Similarly, the divine light is within us. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. You got to let it shine. But if you don't let it shine, then what happens? The spark is not expressed. So the divine now, Tasmad Virada Jayata, Virajo Adhipurusha. Now this is very important. It connects to the story of the Jesus as the messenger. Is it from that divine Father came into existence a son, Virajo Adhipurusha. That is what is exactly it is saying. And that son is described as Brahma in the context of Sanatana Dharma. But that son actually, in my mind, in my opinion, is the son, is the beautiful Jesus, the Christ consciousness. That's exactly what the mantra is saying. From this divine consciousness came Adhipurusha. And then what happened? Sajataha Atyarichyata. Then he also now pervaded. Paschat. After that, he actually decided to do things. Bhumi, the earth. Ataha. After that, Puraha, all the bodies. Okay. Paschat. After that, Bhumi and Pura. then the creation part is over now. The creation part is over. The entire creation has to be sustained. And how do you sustain this creation? And that's called Uttara Srishti. So God has to now provide the material to sustain this whole universe. And therefore He used the sun to sustain the whole universe. And the sun decided to sacrifice himself to sustain the universe. Understand? Hello? Everything has to come from Him only, right? Hello, you understand? Sacrifice, somebody who asked me the question, sacrifice doesn't mean somebody took somebody and chopped him, and sacrifice is coming from the individual. The God said, oh, I made all this creation now. How am I going to sustain this creation? That means what? I have to give them food, I have to give them water, I have to give them all the wind, all the things that are required to sustain that creation, isn't it? Hello, are you all blissed out? I will make a simple logic, right? So where does the food has to come from? Where does the 5 elements have to come from? Where does the sun has to come from? Where has the moon has to come from? Then He said, okay, I have to sacrifice myself to create all the rest to sustain this creation. So that means what? The food we are eating is God. The wind we are breathing is God. The fire we are using is God. The water is God. Everything is God. The material is God. We are God. Everything around us is God. Yat Purushena Havisha Deva Yajnamatanvata. Then all the divine beings said, oh, we have to use this divine being to sacrifice him for the sake of the whole creation. Thy will be done is what it is. Thy will be done. And then the son said, yes, I am ready to sacrifice myself. Use me as the sacrifice to sustain this creation. And he came forward and he offered himself. Now that is exactly what the mantra is saying. This is exactly the crucifixion of the Jesus, is what the next mantras are going to describe. Then they said, okay, if we have to sacrifice this, he will be used for sacrifice. His body will be used for sacrifice. Then his body was used as an animal. The animal was, and the body was tied to something, and they decided to offer this body of the sun for the entire creation to be sustained by this. And this sacrifice is the next two. Yat Purushena Havisha.
Yat Purushena Havisha. Yat Purushena Havisha.
Deva Yajnamatanvata.
Deva Yajnamatanvata. Deva Yajnamatanvata.
Vasanto asya sidajam.
Vasanto asya sidajam. Vasanto asya sidajam.
Not chanting confidently. Vasanto asya sidajam.
Vasanto asya sidajam. Vasanto asya sidajam.
Grishma yidhma.
Grishma yidhma. Grishma yidhma.
Sharadhavihi.
Sharadhavihi. Sharadhavihi.
Grishma yidhma sharadhavihi.
Grishma yidhma sharadhavihi. Grishma yidhma sharadhavihi.
This is a phenomenon. Today morning when I was flying, I was thinking about this mantra. I will explain to you what the literal meaning is. Yat Purushena Havisha. And this individual was used as the sacrifice, Havisha. By who? By conducting a sacrificial ceremony by all the demigods. Deva Yajnamatanvata. All the devas started the yajna, the sacrificial ceremony. And for this sacrificial ceremony, they required the material. and the material was not there. Material will come only after he is sacrificed. So therefore they said they are going to use different seasons as the material. Vasanta is the spring, was used as the ghee. The summer was used as the food. Sharat, the autumn, was used as the sticks for creating the fire. What does that mean? What do you mean spring was used for the ghee, for the fuel? Because in order to create the sacrificial fire, you require three things. You require the food for offering, you require the ghee, and then you require the sticks so that you sustain the fire. What does this mean? The seasons became this. And I had no clue. I was sitting in the flight. I really wanted to sleep, but Swami wouldn't let me sleep. Because how do you understand this? How do we understand that for this sacrificial fire, the seasons became this? Then it stuck to me. These seasons have certain pattern of creation association with them. Most of the food is produced during summer, and the life rejuvenation acts during spring, and during the autumn starts falling everything so that you create the recycle. Those are the three main seasons. And this is the sacrifice Mother Nature is going through. This is the sacrifice Mother Nature starts to going through. When the light starts increasing from January next week, January 14th, what does Mother Nature do? It starts getting itself prepared for spring of the energy, which is the fuel. And once that spring is created, the sunlight increases after that, and it makes all the food that you want for the entire creation. And after that is over, it sacrifices himself into the fire by the autumn and the fall. Fall means what? Everything it gives up. Mother Nature goes through a sacrifice to sustain the creation. The human being all year around, all you can eat, buy one get one free, no control over any damn senses. Human being has no element of sacrifice. Oh, every time you want ice cream? Yes. After ice cream, how about a pizza piece? Yes. Well, how about a can of Coke? Yes. Keep eating and turn the body into caloric excess and obesity, and then start worrying about how to take cholesterol control and all the drugs. Mother Nature does not do that. It responds to the sunlight. So for the sacrifice, you observe the nature. You see the sacrifice right there with the food, with the plants. When do you actually plant the seed? Starting from February in California, that's when they plant the seed. And all the plants will grow. And June, July time, all the beautiful tomatoes, peppers, all the fields, if you walk in the fields, you will understand. All these kids, we should do this cherry picking, going for doing that kind of stuff so that they observe the nature. Take them how the fields are without anything planting. And then what happens? Come autumn, the harvest is over. What do? They plow the whole field and the cycle restarts. That is what this mantra is saying. Sacrifice starts with the Mother Nature. Yat Purushena Havishaga.
Yat Purushena Havishaga. Yat Purushena Havisha
Deva Yajnamatanvata.
Deva Yajnamatanvata. Deva Yajnamatanvata.
Vasanto Asya Sidajam.
Vasanto Asya Sidajam. Vasanto Asya Sidajam.
Grishma Yidma Sharadhavihi.
Grishma Yidma Sharadhavihi. Grishma Yidma Sharadhavihi.
Now they got the material. The material are the seasons. And the person that is going to be offered for sacrifice is this divine consciousness. But they have to now create the boundary for conducting the sacrifice. You have to put the bricks, like, you know, how they conduct the sacrificial fire. In this picture you see all the rishis sitting around, they put the bricks, and the bricks, they get all the material, they are now conducting the yajna, the sacrificial fire. Also in this back. Now, in order to do that, they require boundaries of a framework. And for that, they also require the twigs, what they call samitha. They have to offer the twigs. They got the ghee, they got the food, right? And now they require saptasyasan paridhaya trisaptas samidhakrita deva yad yajnam tanvana abadnan purusham pashum. Saptasyasan paridhaya. They used 7 things to create the boundary of framework. They used 27 things in order to be offered into this fire. And then they started conducting this sacrificial event. And the animal that needs to be sacrificed, for this they tied this animal, and the animal that was tied was this Son of God. Oh my God, the first time I had the revelation about this during a Christmas time, I think I told this before in the Veda class. Jesus was going up this hill, pulling the cross. And I was watching this during Christmas time. It was not during the Easter time. And when I was watching this, I was wondering, I mean, come on, you are Son of God. You have so much power. Why are you letting this happen to you? Why did they tie you down like an animal? Why are they pulling up you all this stuff? And why are you tolerating all this? And suddenly he broke all the shackles and he appeared on the top of the hill. And he said, no, it is not that they're doing to my conscience. They are doing that to my body. And my body is tied like an animal, and it is now going to be offered in sacrifice. In order to raise the mass consciousness of this entire universe, the body of a divine person was used for sacrifice. So sacrifice doesn't mean a bad thing. Hello. Some people think that sacrifice is a bad thing. Sacrifice is not a bad thing. Sacrifice is the most incredible, noble gesture that the Divine One, if He doesn't sacrifice, how can He be a role model for the rest of the universe to absorb the element of love and sacrifice? Therefore, He decided to be a role model by cutting the eye on the cross. And hence he was tied down to this cross like an animal. Not he. The body has been. The body has been. And then he decided. He said, I had all the power to escape all this stuff. But it was the will of the divine consciousness that I should sacrifice my body. And what was conducted was actually a yajna. And who were all the people that were watching? All the divine demigods. Everybody was watching this beautiful sacrifice the Divine One has done for the sake of the creation. It's such an incredible... Now when we really understand this, what this Purusha Suktam is, it is emulating now. It is emulating the value of sacrifice for the whole being. Yeah? Understand? Now you see the passion of Christ in me now when I'm talking about it, because I get choked up and I woke up from the dream like a thunderbolt, and then suddenly I realized, oh my God, this is what the Purusha Suktam is saying. And what is the 7 things that became the framework? The 7 things that became the framework of the fire, of the yajna: water, earth, water, fire, wind, space, sun, moon, day and night. 7. Saptasyasan paridhayaha. Paridhayaha means boundaries. The boundaries are the 5 elements of the nature and the day and the night. Hello. That means what? The whole universe became a sacrificial fire. Can you imagine that? Hello. You're all blissed out? It's incomprehensible. The boundary of that means what? The entire creation is a yajna that is happening day in and day out. Yajna does not mean getting some bowl from Home Depot and getting some sticks from Home Depot, creating a fire, chanting some mantras, throwing in it. That is not the homa. That is not the yajna. That is meaningless. The real homa and yajna is when we actually sacrifice Trisapta, 27 things that God has given us as faculties. When we use them for sacrifice, Trisapta Samidhakrita, 27 became the ones that were offered in the sacrifice. What are the 27 things? Anybody to take? Going one.
The Indian monthly calendar stars.
Indian monthly, you want to sacrifice everybody else but not yourself. 21, 27 that are present within us. I am giving a clue. 27 things that we are made of. That's what we need to use for sacrifice.
So 10 is easy. 5 karmendriya, 5 jnana.
She's connecting now, yes. 5 karmendriya. Translate in English for Murali, please.
5 sense organs and 5 sense perceptions.
Okay, what are those?
Eyes and seeing, nose and smelling, tongue and tasting, skin and feeling, and ears and hearing. That is 5 plus 5, 10. I know that mind is 1, that is 11. I don't know that is. Okay.
Those are all the bad things to be sacrificed. First, only God accepts good things.
Oh.
No, I'm just kidding. God accepts everything with love. But she covered 10. Very beautifully she covered 10. Give Meera again. She's connecting her. Now, we only covered 10. How many more to go? 17. Keep going. So, just to translate what she said very clearly, the 5 that do the action and the 5 that give the perception of knowledge. The 5 that do the action in us are, the first one is the mouth. Okay? Next one are the hands. Third, next is the feet and 2 excretory organs. These are the 5 that are doing predominantly action. Go figure it out. Vak, Pani, Pada, Payu, Upastha. Yes, auntie? Yeah, okay. So, those are the 5 that are doing the action. And they are called karmendriyas. And the 5 action results in 5 perceptual knowledge. First one, Shrotra, listening, feeling, seeing, smelling, tasting. How many we covered? 10. And there are 5 Pancha Pranas, as they call it. The Pancha Pranas are the 5 life forces within us. Breathing in, breathing out. Prana, Apana, Vyana, Udana, Samana. 5 Pancha Pranas, life forces. 5 life forces. We only know 2 things. Oxygen and carbon dioxide. What are the other 3 things? Medical people also don't know. Actually, there are 10 life forces. And the 10 life forces are Prana, Apana, Vyana, Dana, Udana, Samana, Naga, Kurma, Krukara, Datta, Dhananjaya. Even the wind that is required to move your eyelids, that is one life force. Hello. This Veda class is not about learning some mantras, guys. The Veda class, the inner significance, what we are talking about is how even a human body, the faculties perform within our human body. When we don't even have awareness of that, we live like animals in the society. The point is to get the awareness. I have something to sacrifice. I have to sacrifice these 10 plus the 5 life forces, and then the other 5 are the ones that are actually inner senses. The inner senses are Manasu, the mind, Buddhi, the intellect, Chitta, the cognizance, Ahankara, the ego, Jnata, the one that stores all the information. How many we covered so far?
10, 20.
Okay, 5 more to go, 7 more to go. Since we are running late, that's for your Google search for next class. come back with the 7 that we need to connect to. And we'll do a couple bhajans. Unison men, women, and then we'll do the Aarti. Ready? Okay. Let's close with Om and 3 Shantis for the class. Om.